Hi guys, today I'm going to discuss the procedures in black and white printmaking, the contact printing, and photo enlarging.
Let's proceed in contact printing. The step one is position the enlarger. Close the opening in the enlarger head where the negative carry is to play so that light only shines on the baseboard and not out of the slot because stray light might fog. Pwede siyang guys, maging malabo. Other people's print in a school communal dark room. This is very critical, guys. Turn the enlarger lamp on. Place the printing frame on the baseboard of the enlarger. Raise the enlarger head until the entire printing frame is illuminated. And let's move on to the step 2. Set the lens aperture and the enlarger timer. Set the enlarger lens aperture to f11 and the timer to 3 seconds for a trial exposure. Take a test strip at 3 seconds intervals. And then, the step 3, identify the emulsion side of the negatives and paper. Negatives must have their emulsion side towards the emulsion side of the paper. The emulsion side of the film, which is duller than the back side, tends to curl. Yung guys, parang nakapakulot, naka-curve, ganon. The emulsion side of the paper is shinier and smoother than the reverse side, especially on the glossy sheets, guys. And then the step 4, insert the negatives and one sheet of paper in the printing frame. The emulsion side of the paper goes on the bottom. Negatives are placed on the top of the paper. Emulsion side down. The negatives and paper are securely held together by the glass top of the frame. If you don't have a printing frame, simply lay the paper on the enlarger baseboard. Place the negatives on the top and cover everything with a simple piece of glass. Step 5. Expose and process the print. Push the timer button to start the enlarging light on and expose the print with the printing frame in position under the enlarger head. Prepare the paper for use. Evaluate the print once it has been fixed. Step 6. Evaluate the print. Depending on the exposure each frame got into the camera. Some will be lighter while others will be darker. Examine the film margins in the print to determine overall print exposure. They should be black with legible edge numbers and a very tiny variance between the edges and the darker sprocket holes on 35mm film. And now let's move on to photo enlarging. There's a tatlo siyang guys, the part 1, part 2, and part 3. The part 1, setting up the enlarger. Step 1, place your negative in the enlarger carrier. The enlarger carrier is a slide-out plastic tray for the enlarger. To use it, open the tray and place your negative inside, making sure the picture you wish to enlarge is aligned, naka-align siya guys, with the square hole in the tray. The carrier should then be inserted back into the enlarger after closing the tray. Step 2. Clamp the enlarger down over the carrier. The negative will be sealed inside the enlarger carrier if the enlarger is clamped down. The correct technique to clamp down the enlarger will be vary depending on the model, but there should be a switch or lever on the side of the device that you pull or crack. The step 3, position a sheet of scrap paper on the projection plane. The projection plane is a flat frame on which you'll be displaying your image. Before closing the frame, lift up the top layer and insert a spare piece of paper. After that, replace the frame on the enlarger's base. Turn off the lights in the dark room. It will be easier to see your image projected on the scrap paper if the lights are turned off because you will be working with actual picture paper later. It will also vital to turn off the lights. If you take the picture paper from the container while the lights are on, it will be damaged. Sira na yung ano mo guys, yung picture. Then the step 5, turn the enlarger on using the timer. The timer is the little box with a connection that connects it to the enlarger. Locate the switch on the timer and flip it to turn the enlarger on. The timer's display should light up when you flip it. Then push the outlet focus uh, button to turn on the enlarger's light bulb. And then the step 6, adjust the height of the enlarger until the image fits on the scrap paper. The enlarger should include a knob that allows you to raise and lower it, either towards the rear or on the side. The projected picture will become larger as the enlarger is raised, and it will be shrink as the enlarger lower. Step 7, focus the image using the knob on the side of the enlarger. When you expand a negative for the first time, it will most likely be out of focus. Turn the knob clockwise or counterclockwise until the image is clear and crisp again. Step 8, uh, set the aperture on the enlarger to f8 for most photographs. The enlarger's lens opening is determined by the aperture setting. The wider the lens and the lighter that enters through. The higher the aperture, the brighter your image is. The lighter that travels through it. Rotate the lens on the enlarger until it reaches f of 8 to change the aperture. And then the part 2, let's go to the part 2 guys. Testing the exposure. And here's the first step. Cut a strip of photo paper to test the exposure with. You'll need to test multiple exposure period on a strip of photo paper before printing onto a full-size sheet of photo paper to find which time is ideal for your image. Cut a strip long enough to capture a piece of the image in detail. The strip size does not have to be exact. The step 2, place the strip of paper on the projection plane. Place the strip within the frame after opening the top of the frame. Close the frame after that. And then step 3, expose the entire strip of paper to light for 2 seconds. Set the exposure timer to 2 seconds using the dial on the timer. Then, to turn on the light bulb within the enlarger, push the start button on the timer. The light should turn off after 2 seconds. And then the step 4, cover 1/5 of the strip and expose the rest of it for another 2 seconds. Cover the end of the strip with a piece of thick scrap paper. That way, that the strip won't be exposed to any lighter, and you'll be able to see what 2 seconds of light exposure looks like after it develops. Set the timer for 2 seconds and push the start button when you cover 1/5 of the strip. And then the step 5, repeat until you've exposed 5 sections to different durations of life. Increase the exposure duration for each successive section. And then for the remaining 3 portion, use the following timing. Cover 2/5 of the strip with tape and expose it to light for 4 seconds. Then the second, cover fifths of the strip with tape and expose it to light for about 8 seconds. And then the last, cover 4/5 of the strip with tape and expose it to light for about 12 seconds. And then let's move on to step 6. Develop the test strip. Dip the strip of paper in a development pot for 60 seconds. Then for 30 seconds, place it in a stop bath, stirring constantly. After that, soak the paper for 30 seconds in a fixed bath. Finally, raise it for about 1 to 2 minutes with water. The step 7. Use the test strip to determine the best exposure time for final print. The image you've created should be broken into 5 portions. Choose the best looking portion, not too bright or too dark, and write down the exposure duration for that region so that you can utilize it in your final print. The following are the exposure times for the various section. 2 seconds for the per section, 4 seconds for the second section, 8 seconds for the third section, 16 seconds for the fourth session, and then the last is 28 seconds for the fifth session. The step 8, make a more specific test strip if none of the exposure look quite right. Ano lang to guys, optional kung hindi nyo talaga nakuha. And then, test the strip is a useful tool for determining what exposure time is ideal for your shot. If none of the colors on the test strip are what you desire, trying proceeding a new test strip with shorter exposure times. And then let's go to the part 3, enlarging and developing your final print. This is the step 1. Turn the lights off again. To avoid the picture paper being destroyed by light, do this before removing it for your final print. Turn on the red safety light. If it isn't already on, so you can see what you're doing. The step 2, place a full sheet of photo paper on the projection plane. Lift the top of the frame, place the paper inside, close it. The projection plane should then be placed on the enlarger's base. Then the step 3, expose the paper to light using your desired exposure time. Using the dial, set the exposure time on the timer. After that, make sure that projected image is aligned with the photo paper and start the timer. And then the step 4, this is the final process step. Develop your final print. Repeat the developing process that you use for the test strip. After 60 seconds in the development bath, immerse the paper in the stop bath for 30 seconds. Finally, rinse the paper with water after 30 seconds in the fixed bath. Hang your final print to dry it in the dark room once you've done developing it. And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching.